This episode of the BeanCast is brought to you by Methodify by Delvinia. Get real-world customer feedback in hours, not weeks. Schedule your demo and get a free $20 Starbucks gift card. Go to methodify.it/BeanCast and methodify it today. Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 586, What Comes After? For Monday, March 30th, 2020. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norp. Thanks for joining us. With all the fuss over what to do right now in the marketing world, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that our business is mainly about planning ahead. So what will the post-pandemic world look like, and how can we ready our brands? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, how adversity makes us more creative, the widening gap between audience growth versus ad spend, why some brands closed their e-stores, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the Vice President of Digital Marketing at Westfield, Mr. Christopher Baccus. Chris, hi, how are you?
Hey, Bob, I'm good. Thanks for letting me take a break from all the family time I get to deal with these days. And they're lovely, but this is a nice break. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Now, also with us, we're excited to finally get back a veteran Chief Strategy Officer who now does innovation and brand consulting for companies around the world, Ms. Rose Cameron. You know, that sounds really impressive until you realize you probably aren't traveling around the world right now, are you?
Oh my God, you have no idea, Bob. I was back about 3 weeks prior to the whole thing coming down, as it were, because I had to have an operation done. And thank you, God, for giving me an operation. And I actually posted to people, I have been here for 4 weeks. If you see me in State College, Pennsylvania, I was not in Milan during the outbreak.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, because people were jumping away from me in the street. You've gone from the world traveler to leper, you know?
I've heard, someone said on Twitter something to the effect that it's gone so fast from bless you to F you whenever you see someone sneezing in front of you.
Absolutely.
Now, also with us, we're excited to also have back the CEO of both Twit.tv and Artisanal Agency, the one and only Ms. Lisa Laporte. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Bob. It's great to be back and doing something besides, surviving this crisis for the last couple of weeks. So looking forward to doing the show.
A lot of Nintendo has been going on at my house. That's all I'm saying. In addition to the work, I'm doing work, but Nintendo fills the hours. It's great. Of course, I'm getting my butt handed to me by Whitney.
That sounds about right.
Yep.
Well, let's move on to the topics and get serious here, because I read a thought-provoking piece on The Drum this past week about the importance of planning for after, meaning after all this. And the writer points out that we can get lost in the moment of acting against a crisis and ignore the fact that what we do in marketing is really plan months, if not years ahead for calendar events. Rose, I know brands are focused on what to do now. I mean, that's obvious. Nobody knows what to do with this crisis, and everybody's kind of exploring new options. But how do you move all the people you're working with ahead toward how to emerge afterward? How do you get people thinking in that vein?
Yeah, I mean, I'm living this right now, Bob, because we had all these projects that were, these forward casting projects embedded in companies. And then this little thing called COVID-19 came down. And as you know, a lot of my clients are in the food industry. And it really, they have been amazing. They have been so amazing. The people who are keeping the food coming to the American people, and I'm living with them right now, and that means 24/7, right?
Right.
So I could get a call at 11, 1, etc., saying, okay, we need to get this communication out, we need to do this, how do we do this, Rose? And what I'm finding is really interesting was that we had a lot of talk about how not to be tone deaf, right? Because we had all this stuff moving forward, and it's like we still need to move forward because the future is still there. It's not leaving us. But we have to be conscious of dealing with issues right now. So how do we go about doing that without sounding tone deaf? And one of our greatest challenges in the work that we do is people fighting against change. They're not even doing it consciously. It's an unconscious activity that's very much driven by your anxiety of looking stupid because you don't know how to do something overrides the need for change. We're in a time right now that survival anxiety is so bloody high that people will do anything. They'll learn anything to make sure that their communities survive. So in some ways, this is the perfect time to deal with change, to introduce people to change, because their survival anxiety is so high that you can say, okay, to serve our customers, to do this right now, we're going to have to start working in this way. Now,
are you talking about short-term change for now, or are you talking about long-term change, that actually
both.
takes root?
Both.
Okay.
So if you've done your forward casting, you already know where your company needs to go, right? And this is the opportunity for a lot of those naysayers, those people who have previously said the world's never going to change, we've always been successful this way, to turn around and go, oops, well, the world isn't the same. And you can use that to say, okay, these discussions we've been having about owning this direction, or having our employees more empowered, or having the customer at the center, we can trial out a lot of that thinking right now. And what I've also found is people are so acutely sensitive to the strengths and the weaknesses of their organizations. This is a great filter time to get in there with some of the people who have been taken off the field that you're always told, oh, you can't talk to them, like the reps, the sales reps that are always out in the fields. You can never, it's like they go to the Sahara for like 11 months out of the year. Now they're all back in because they've been grounded. This is an incredible time to do planning, because those guys who are very action oriented, a lot of them are sitting there and feeling very insecure. So you have those people to work with. I've been doing a huge number of workshops, ideations, doing that future casting, because those people are available right now. They're desperate to work and they want to make a difference. So you've got this amazing psychological space right now where people are being tremendously innovative because all of the old barriers don't matter.
Is it universal? I mean, it's just like, I want to broaden this to everybody. I mean, are you finding all your clients are looking at this as an opportunity for them to reimagine themselves, to respond to change, to become a growth-oriented business that's thinking ahead to what happens afterwards? Or are people resistant and just kind of dragging their feet in this process?
Well, I'll say my people are pre-qualified, because my clients that work with Martin and I, they very much have already put their hands up and said, we want to change, right?
Right.
But even among them, you have some people who are like, well, I just kind of need to reset right now. So there's the reset crew who are like, let me just get through the first 2 months of this trauma and then I'll be back with you. I have colleagues who their entire client base has been decimated. Right. They one chap who I've known for years, worked with for years, very talented. I was on the phone with him saying, hey, I need your help on this. He said, thank God, Rose, because in the past 2 hours, every single one of my clients has phoned. They've either shuttered their doors, they've stopped their campaigns, they've shuttered their retail. So there are a lot of really good people out there right now saying, what do I do next? Because their clients are in either reset mode or permanent, forget this for a game of chess mode, right? A lot of people have taken this opportunity, boomers who are at that age anyhow, to say, this looks like a good time to down tools.
How about you, Chris? What's your business looking like these days? Are you kind of planning for what comes next, or is it just mainly a fire drill trying to deal with the crisis as it exists right now?
It's so great talking about this stuff right now, and it is such an interesting and unique time. I will say probably the first week, maybe week and a half of all this, which really did begin probably about 3 weeks ago, was very reactive. So it was, what hours are we operating? What restaurants are staying open? What tenants do we have that are essential? Very in the moment, very reactionary what we were doing. I would say we knew that was going to be part of it, and definitely being in digital marketing. I talked to my team before we kind of all went into work from home mode, and just say, listen, we're going to be called on a lot because a lot of the physical space is going to have a temporary reprieve, and we need to go ahead and do what we can on digital channels to go ahead and still be relevant, and still to be a voice for our brand and our company and our customers. And that was very realized thing the last several weeks. I mean, we have been busier than busy. It has just been insane. It's almost like holiday season, honestly, right now, in the sense of like retail marketing. And, it has not slowed down one bit, but it's gotten to the point where we've moved out of the reactionary phase into really more of a strategic phase. So really what we've been talking about are a lot of creative brainstormings and ideation around what does this look like once we're out of it. And out of it can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different phases. I don't think anyone's thinking we go right back to where we were, I don't know, March 10th or 8th or whatever the day is for you. But it probably is some version between with social distancing there and a lot of change, physical type of behaviors, but maybe not the sense of full isolation, which is what a lot of us are practicing right now with safe at home initiatives and things like that. So how you go ahead and plan strategically from a marketing campaign, kind of coming back, if you will, even if it comes in phases, that's been something that we've been really working on quite a bit. And it's spent a lot of time on definitely this past week and definitely for future weeks as we figure out, where do we go from here?
I want to probe a little bit on that. This idea of change afterwards. The marketplace is going to be radically different, isn't it, Lisa? I mean, it's going to be something that is remarkably transformed in everything. I mean, Chris brings up the fact about social distancing. We may not be locked in our apartments, but I can envision a world that's afraid to touch each other for a while. And I'm wondering, how do these changes multiply? How do we absorb them? How do we deal with them? I mean, what kind of changes are we going to have to look for in the marketplace after this?
Well, I think in the marketplace, the first thing you're going to see is people are going to be outside wearing a mask. And if you're not wearing some form of a mask, you'd probably be frowned upon. I think people are going to have to start understanding that this is going to change our marketplace moving forward. And I'd like to, also chime in on what Rose said and what Chris said, in that I immediately went in straight into strategic planning mode about 3 weeks ago and started to reach out to all of our clients and everyone we work with too. And just realizing that this impact's happening. So I'm seeing more and more people. What I really appreciate is that, at least the people I'm working with, we have a combination of people just hitting the panic button, completely pulling out campaigns, completely like laying off, 80% of their company because they have to. What they did determined on their people getting out in the real world and being in front of people. So I think, at least the people I'm talking to, we're talking about the crisis that is happening now, what we're doing now, and how we think this is going to impact us coming out of this in 6 to 9 months, if that is the apex is going to be, 6 to 9 months. So I think the beauty that I'm seeing, I think it could be the explosion of the internet, is that people are taking this more seriously. Unfortunately, there's some information out there that's incorrect, but I think a lot of the information that we're getting that's real is going to help us, determine what we do strategically moving forward. And I think the fact that we're now global and everyone has the internet, that we're going to help make better choices in the future. Do I think industries are going to go away entirely? Probably. But I see all of us in this together, which I like. And I just think if people can continuing to look at this as we're all in it together, we can come up with the right solutions down the road.
It's interesting, Bob and Lisa and Chris, I'd be interested to see if you're seeing this. I'm in a situation with a great many of my clients and their clients that the time has come where the boomers are starting to retire. They have succession plans for their kids to move in on their places of business. this seems to be giving those kids a real reason. It's like them coming to the ball. This is one of their first ever major issues where they're leading companies. And it's the making of men and women in a corporate sense in a different cut than, say, their parents previously. And giving them a platform that they can be given credibility. So it's also very interesting. I don't know if you guys are seeing that as well.
I've seen a little bit of it. I've been seeing more and more people really willing to step up and become creative in this environment with, you're right, the boomers stepping aside. So most of the people I've been talking to, like the CMOs that are getting that we're going to be in this for the long haul, are like, hey, we're not looking this just as a partnership. We're looking this as our brand is merging with your brand, and we're going to be in this all together. And it's beyond just a typical partnership. So I'm seeing that a lot more from the younger people, and I'm seeing more of the older crowd. Hey, I'm in it, panicking and just pulling completely out. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, very similar to what Lisa just said. What we're seeing is, more partnership conversations, even some industry to industry conversations. So it's been really open within that piece too. No one really knows how long we're going to be in this. I think some of the really, really short time type of thinking has kind of gone away. And we think this is not weeks now. We think it's definitely months. And I think people get very concerned when it becomes a year plus conversation. So we'll see how, it plays out. But I agree. Right now, I think there's a very much an openness to say, all right, we're all in this together. How do we go ahead and find some, partnership and sense of community, even within the business environment to, do the right thing.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular to think about the community coming together in such meaningful ways when they're trying to deal with this problem. I mean, I think that there is some positives to think about on the horizon in terms of what the impact will be on consumers as a whole, because this radical change, we think about it in negative terms as marketers. We think about the fact that social distancing may be a factor. We think about masks. You brought that up, Lisa. It's like how masks could potentially be a sign, not wearing one could be a sign of social inadequacy of some sort. But there's also the positive that we're all gathered around this problem trying to solve it together, and we're connecting via digital means and we're communicating. How does that impact the marketplace going forward, Rose? I mean, does that make it so that our job could be a little bit easier in some ways? Because for brands that do it right, for brands that communicate friendship and communicate community to their consumers, are they able to set themselves up for some benefits down the line, being part of this grand global movement to solve this crisis?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think of New York right after 9/11, very similar feeling. The question is, how long will this last for? This feeling of community, because we come together. Remember New York right after 9/11. Suddenly it wasn't New York. It was, these little neighborhoods and all pulling together. And it was a really beautiful thing. I look at this situation that we're in right now, and I see so many people reflecting something I saw in research just before I came out of the field. Right before I came home, I was in Milan about 6 weeks ago. And I was there. And funnily enough, I was researching pulmonologists. So all of these hospitals, I was in them prior to this all going down. And one of the things that we were researching was the complete lack of ability of some young people to know how to rest. They would come down with chronic illnesses and they wouldn't know how to rest. The doctors were saying, would you just please rest? And they, no, because, in today's world, you got to be doing this and this and this. And if you don't do that, then you're not successful and you're a lazy person. This is a massive reset button where it says, sit the heck down, be with your loved ones, eat your ice cream while it's still available, and just stop already. And I think people are having a crash course on, hey, this is what quiet looks like. This is what peace and rest looks like, as well as all the crazy stuff. This is what connections with your friends look like. Who are you contacting every single day? That's a big indicator of who you consider to be really critical in your life.
Well, there was another article that came up on the feed that I want to talk about in just a minute because it kind of expands on this conversation. It's the idea that adversity breeds better creativity and that people get more creative in these situations. I think it's going to expand this conversation beautifully, but we're going to talk about our sponsor first because Methodify by Delvinia is sponsoring our show, and they're going to give you an opportunity to get a $20 Starbucks gift card just for checking them out. Look, I'm going to take a different tack on this ad tonight because I want you to know about the fact that these guys are perfect for the times we're living in. If you've been listening to the show for the last month, you know we've been discussing COVID-19 and how it's affecting the marketing and advertising industry, as well as the people in it and consumers and the marketplace, etc. Now, you may have seen recently that McDonald's released an ad in Brazil that separated the arches for social distancing, and the majority of the people who saw it felt like it was not appropriate, and there was a big backlash over it. Everyone's a little on edge right now. You've got a marketplace that's scared. People are scared. Brands are scared because every brand behind every brand is a real person like you making decisions. You know, we're all just on edge at this moment. This is where our sponsor, Methodify by Delvinia, can help. Methodify collects real feedback from your actual customers on concepts or creative before you release it into the world. And the whole process takes hours, not days. Methodify gives insight professionals and senior marketing people the information they need to power better decisions that will protect their brands and themselves in this new world. Just this past weekend, Methodify was used to test digital creative for another fast food chain that will go nameless to make sure the messaging wasn't tone deaf. It was valuable information for them, and Methodify can do the same thing for you. Actual customer feedback is a game changer because in times like these, brands that wait and see are going to wind up making costly mistakes. Now, connect with your customers, build relationships, build trust, build fans, but test everything at this moment, and Methodify can get you started today. To find out more about Methodify and to set up a demo, just Methodify it, literally Methodify it. Go to methodify.it/BeanCast. That's methodify.it, Methodify it/BeanCast. And as a way of saying thanks, every BeanCast listener who signs up and completes a demo will receive a $20 Starbucks gift card just for your time. I know you can't use it at most Starbucks because most Starbucks are closed right now, especially in New York, but they're all going to open up again. Starbucks isn't going anywhere. And heaven knows we all have plenty of time at this moment. So again, give it a try. That address is methodify.it/BeanCast. And we thank them very much for their support of our program. Now, an Adweek opinion piece this past week posited that in times of crisis, humans get out of their ruts and get more creative, purely out of necessity. Because of that, the author claims that the entire ad industry will come out of this whole crisis much more creative as a whole. First, Chris, is this a reasonable expectation? And if so, what parts of the business will be most affected besides the actual creative elements?
So I loved reading this, and I thought it was so at the moment, at the right point, and exactly what companies should be thinking about and executing. Actually, the article in Adweek really talking about this whole idea of had 6 steps to go ahead and do creative brainstorming in video conferencing environments, which is granted a very challenging environment to do brainstorming with. But this is the right time, and it is the time when things like this do happen. When you look at innovation in companies and a lot of innovation research and writings on innovation, you usually find the peak of innovation really happening when a company is brand new, or you see innovation starting to happen when it is on a decline. And hopefully when it's on a decline, it's kind of at the start of the decline, and those are the companies who tend to get out of it, or if you're kind of too deep in the decline, it's a little too late at that point. I think in this particular example, you can say there's something similar going on here. There is so much disruption at such a significant level, personally and professionally. And so we are all living it together right now. And what that does is it really goes ahead and makes you take a step back. It makes you think as whether you're an event marketer who now has quite a bit of time to figure out, well, what does event marketing mean in this day and age? That's going to go ahead and inspire a lot of changes in innovation and thought and creativity. If you're, I think Rose mentioned earlier, if you're that kind of person on the road, salesperson, you're not on the road right now. So you have some time to, think a bit more strategically, more reflectively, and what can you be doing so when you're back out there again, that you're doing it at a much higher level of effort and impact. And so whether it's creative campaigns that we're coming back with, which I think the smart marketing companies, like we were talking about earlier, are moving beyond just simple reactive mode into proactive mode and thinking, all right, what are we going to be doing once we kind of come out of this in some types of phases? And that creativity is going to really go ahead and spark a lot of interesting campaigns. Hopefully they'll land very well. I'm sure some will not. But we will, I think, see a renaissance in some really interesting thinking and how so many industries are impacted by this. I mean, financial crisis, we saw in 2008 a lot of change in how lenders were dealing with this issue. You had companies like Hyundai that was doing the Hyundai Assurance program that, by the way, now everybody seems to be doing in this particular crisis, which is basically saying, we're going to go ahead and either pay your next 3 months, or in the Hyundai Assurance example, if you do get laid off, we're going to go ahead and kind of take care of you during that time. So there's a lot of creativity that happens in that. And that Hyundai example, by the way, it won major ad awards in, I think, 2008 or 2009. And so it had a lot of impact inside the industry and changed how kind of the lending world kind of saw their customer and did it in a way that was very meaningful for the moment. This is a very different one because it's not just one industry. It's really it's every industry right now. So I think we're going to see just a mountain of interesting ideas and thoughts, and hopefully some really amazing creativity kind of coming out of this as a positive in it, because it is that moment, just like the company that might be going on the decline, to go ahead and try to save itself. And so I think right now we're all kind of a moment of, how do we go ahead and save ourselves? And that can mean repositioning, being more strategic, and maybe even coming up with a really great, brilliant campaign.
One of the things about this article, first, what rang true? What rang true for me was this idea that businesses will get more creative with their solutions. What didn't ring true for me was ad agencies are going to have more creative campaigns. I just don't see that happening. I'm not sure if I'm just jaded, Rose, or what, but it's like I can see marketers coming up with very innovative solutions to get out of this problem, to move forward in different steps. But I just don't see agencies getting more creative because of the restrictions and the structure of the way that the big holding companies have been put together.
I think that's valid. That's valid, Bob, because also a lot of the agencies they're drinking from a fire hose right now. So they're either having that, completely pulling away of investment, or, help us sort all of this craziness out that is involved around, us closing our stores, us going to new models, whatever. So I think a lot of our creative people are hunkered down right now and just cranking stuff out. With that said, I think that there are certain industries that have been institutions for a really long time. They've been static. They've fought against change, that we are seeing some glimmering lights here with regards to their approach to creativity, because if they don't show a level of creativity, they'll be bankrupt. Who do I mean? AHIP. So AHIP, everybody check out their website, the American Health Insurance Providers Association. All of these guys got together and said, okay, we could all go under with this. What are we going to do? What are we offering free? Where are we killing pre-authorizations? Go on that website, see what all these different insurance providers are doing. I think it's a window into the future, because many of them are offering up free telemedicine. How is that going to impact us in future? They're offering up dropping pre-authorizations. How is that going to impact how business is done? If it proves out that it's perfectly okay to do that nobody's skiving off of them. There's a huge number of things they're doing, and they're such conservative institutions to be doing this. It says to me, okay, they think this is going to be bad. If they say, guess what? Emotional therapy, psychological therapy, it'll be free from the following providers. That says to me they already know that people are going to be in this for the long run and that they're really going to need this help. And if they don't give them this help, we're going to have even higher mortality rates. So always look at those conservative institutions, see what they're doing at times like this, because that's almost the guarantee that these are areas that are going to be invested in the future.
Lisa, I'd love your thoughts on this as well, because, businesses don't change just by crisis. I mean, crisis is a great, I don't know what we call a grinding stone. It helps us to get to a place where we can become more creative. But, if it's also meeting against business realities and business structures that are in place, creativity doesn't happen. I mean, no matter how bad that grindstone is, it's still going to chew you up, and you're never going to fix anything afterwards if your structures aren't willing to change with them and bend.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. I work with several agencies that are just not changing. They are just canceling contracts. They're going in full preventive mode to just sustain and stay alive. Being a small agency myself, 3 weeks ago, I jumped on this. I started contacting all of our direct clients, started working with them on trying to be creative with working from home, pivoting my sales team from hunting B2C, clients and going after B2B, work from home products, security products, things that are still going to be relevant moving forward for what we're doing. So I found that I was a few weeks ahead of the curve. What I am seeing is that half of my agencies, they're the younger agencies. They're a little bit, they're not the old dinosaurs that have been around forever, for lack of a better, analogy for them. But the younger agencies, they're actually like already all over this. They're trying to work with their clients on different strategies so that everyone doesn't pull out and we do become more creative. So I agree with Rose in that we're all going to start looking at the conservative, no offense, for lack of a better word, dinosaurs that are out there that have been around forever and see what they're doing. I encourage everyone to jump on different webinars. I'm in a CEO webinar, I'm in marketing webinars. I'm trying to find as much data and see what other people are doing and just really researching and doing these different, information gatherings now that we're all hunkered down at home. So I think you're going to see a mix. I realize that a lot of people understand that we have to find ways to move forward, and it'll be a mixture of people that are younger that are willing to do that, dinosaurs that are just going to go away and cancel contracts, and then the rest of us looking to become creative and just pivot to focus on the work from home products, focus on the big B2B and the enterprise, business that's out there. Because I have to be honest with you, as soon as I found out that all the trade shows in the tech world are going to be canceled for the rest of the year, like Black Hat, RSA just did their last one. They don't know when they're going to open again. I started pulling those lists, and we're sending our guys out to hunt after those people and see if they want to find their audience a different way. So I really think the creativity, juices are going to keep flowing, but it's really going to be dependent upon the person and if they're willing to take it on and do this, to survive as a community and just as a world.
Well, I want to continue this conversation. My topics flow really well into each other this week. Just because so many of the topics are connected at this point. But each week this pandemic continues, we see that there's this gulf of sorts that keeps growing between the media audience on every platform. Every media platform is growing, but brands remaining reluctant to advertise, in fact, pulling back, as we've heard many times on the show tonight. Linear TV way up, while ad buyers are reaching record lows. Ad buys are reaching record lows. Digital platforms are reaching mammoth levels, while ad buyers pull back. Lisa, is there any way to reasonably reverse this flow? You've given us a lot of your thoughts about how you've been reaching out to individual advertisers and giving them creative solutions, but on a massive scale, on a macro scale, how do we solve this problem? How do we convince advertisers to come back into the fold as media providers?
I think advertisers are going to have to change their messaging and really look around and realize that they're in this together. We're talking to advertisers for work at home products, for business security products, for connectivity, to your companies and how people are going to actually get through this. So the one thing I did see was that, buying has been down anyways. Everyone thought a recession was going to hit in Q1, so advertisers were pulling back then. And now with COVID-19 hitting, I think anything in the B2C realm is just falling completely apart. So we have to get back out in front of advertisers and in front of brands. Everyone's going to have to take a hit. I think right now everyone can plan on giving a 20 to 30% discount across the board on every media outlet if they're going to attract any advertisers. And I hope that brands don't take advantage of media outlets for that, but they're going to see a good 20 to 30% discount to get people back on board and actually advertising. I think the common link I've been expressing to, my direct clients is that if everybody pulls out and cancel advertising, nobody's going to know about brands, because remember, we're not walking around anymore. So this is really the only way to get in front of people right now, with the entire world being locked down. So part of me is like, this is the opportune time to be advertising. And if media outlets are going to get those ad dollars from these brands to come back and start playing, they're going to have to look at giving them a discount and helping them strategize on how they're going to introduce these products now to people. Because I have to tell you, Bob, the only way you're going to get in front of someone now is through media. If the entire United States of America is locked down until the end of April, well, other countries are also locked down. So the reality is, this is the way for brands to still get in front of people and show that they're in it together. Now, there was a second piece to this where you said, you're talking about how people are pulling out of programmatic advertising because they're concerned about being on a program with COVID-19. I've even received a couple of those emails, and I'm like, I don't get it. I think it's like, why would you care where your brand falls in media at this particular moment? Everybody's dialing in to see what's happening with COVID-19. I think if any brand is going to advertise, they can easily be in that kind of programming. I don't even understand why they would pull out. What they should do is try to find a way to give somebody a service or a product that can help benefit them during this time. So I think it's a mistake for people to pull out. I think they're going to have to put more money in at this particular moment. And I then look at all the media outlets and say, okay, guys, it's time to discount and do this smart to keep brands in front of people.
Well, let's get Chris's opinion on this, because it's just like there's got to be some rational reasons for putting those kind of restrictions in place when you're dealing with a programmatic buy. I mean, I tend to agree with Lisa. It's not a smart move to pull all ads that have any association with COVID-19 when all the associations are with COVID-19 right now. But are there any good strategic reasons for pulling back on that and maybe trying to avoid COVID-19 association right now?
It's interesting in my industry, in the kind of mall operator space, and the fact that we do have tenants that are still operating and that are doing, takeout delivery. We have, Costco's and Targets and places and supermarkets and pharmacies that are at some of our centers. And so actually we've taken the exact opposite. What we've done is really kind of moved a lot of our paid search strategy around, a lot of the keywords of what people are doing right now, so they're searching for what's open, what's available, what they could go ahead and find out. We also want to create more awareness of what is going on at our physical locations. So, we have, statements about COVID-19. We want to make sure those are prominent so there's not confusion, and that customers are aware of what is open, what's not open, and when we might be open again. So, it's really context. And so we haven't really pulled away from that. We've actually pulled ourselves into it to make sure that people are able to find what they need about our brand and about our company, because we know this is what everyone is thinking about right now and what they're concerned about. And so I think changing your message, I think, is something that was mentioned a second ago there. That's what's really key. But I can see why some brands don't really want to be in conversation in programmatic buying with a pandemic virus. I mean,
it's a real concern. It's a real concern. Yeah. Like, I can see a brand with a product that could seem opportunistic if you were advertising around COVID-19. Like there's certain brands that would seem like they were. I'm not going to name names, but I mean, there's certain brands where just the nature of their product could seem a little bit overly opportunistic, and it could be a bad brand impression to be associated with the disease outbreak. Yeah. But I agree with you. In most cases, I don't see any kind of bad blowback from being associated with it at this point because all the news is about it. Rose, what do you think? Are you in agreement with all this, or do you have a different opinion?
Oh my God. I'm so I've been literally going, okay, come on, ask me. Have you guys seen the DHL ad?
Yeah, I've not seen it, no.
Okay, I'll send all of you the DHL ad. It is this beautiful homage to all of the guys right now getting the parcels and getting them to the people. And, we're dealing with an invisible enemy right now, and all of these people who have previously been invisible heroes are coming out to the forefront. And I'm amazed by that. So many of the brands out there don't talk about their own people who fuel their company. And you've got things like delivery, all these things we took for granted, guys. There would be food on the shelves, that things would be delivered, that Prime would actually deliver my toilet tissue subscription, you bays. Anyhow.
Well, Rose, I actually saw right before we got on the podcast today on TV, Quilton Northern is running an ad that basically has kind of the toilet paper is coming kind of ad. And it was a very, very subtle, very light kind of message, but just the fact that, hey, listen, not to worry, we're here and we're present and we know you need this. So brands are responding in that kind of thoughtful way, like your THL example. Totally. And that's exactly what they should be doing.
And a lot of these guys haven't been on screen for a long time, Chris, because they just assumed that they had a legacy that had paid for itself and it would always be there. But then you go to the grocery store and you see all of the bleach sold out, and Pine Sol is sitting there, nobody's touching it. And you're like, okay, Pine Sol, you have got to get out there and do some advertising because nobody remembers that you're the same darn thing as bleach.
That's true.
And I invite all of you, if you work on a brand, go to, and you're very safe in wearing gloves and a mask, go to the grocery store, look at what's still on the shelves versus what's not on the shelves. And those are people we should all be targeting and helping as quickly as possible, because even in these times, their product is not considered worthwhile. I'm actually kind of thrilled because I'm the only lamb eater in the United States from what I can figure out so far. So our family is doing okay because we just keep eating British and, nobody else does here. So, at least my family's fed.
Well, that's good. At least you're fed. I mean, as for me, I find it great comfort to go into the grocery store and find that any of the vegan products are still there. I've said this on the show in previous weeks. It's hysterical because there's anything to do with the vegetarian vegan market there's lots of stuff left in there, and it's because even in an apocalypse, nobody will go for this stuff. But I actually enjoy it. I'm not a vegan, but I do enjoy it. Well, anyway, I want to move on to the final topic of the evening. Some retailers didn't just shut down physical stores, they shut down their e-commerce sites as well. Now, some of this makes sense. Like there's a clothing retailer, Ukes, that is shut down for the most part because they're an Italian company, and it's just like Italy is shut down. They can't get into the warehouse, so they can't ship you anything. But at least they're still taking orders. But there were brands like early on, like Victoria's Secret, which went completely dark, even on their e-commerce. Rose, how would you advise brands about these kinds of decisions? Is this smart to shut down the e-com site during a time when that's about all there is for shopping?
Well, I'd like to give Victoria's Secret a personal message. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm usually too tired to do anything like that. I now have the energy, but you don't make your products in my size, and then you went and you shut down. So you could be doing a storm in business right now with people who actually want to take this time to reconnect, if you know what I mean.
That's such a great point. Such a great point. How about you, Chris? I mean, what is your thoughts on this? I mean, you're dealing with e-com, you're dealing with physical retail. I can understand the physical retail going dark, but there's very few instances where I can see a solid reason for the e-com site to go down unless for some reason your warehouse can't be staffed. I mean, that's the only reason I can see for this to become a problem.
Yeah, I kind of read it a couple ways. I think Patagonia, it was one of the outdoor clothing brands, I believe, shut down their e-commerce just out of concern for their employees. So even even e-commerce employees are taking a risk at kind of coming into that environment and leaving home and, being susceptible possibly to coronavirus. So I think on that side, it makes a lot of sense. And I think for brands that are, kind of more, in that space of consideration and, being smart with the world, maybe more of a green company or something like that might feel that, maybe we could wait it out a little bit, still pay our employees. Hopefully they are still doing that. And then they could kind of come out of this with renewed energy. I do think, certainly it makes sense to still have your e-commerce site. There's a lot of people twiddling their thumbs and kind of wondering what to do and maybe, ordering a few things to pass the time. There's no doubt about that. But I think that risk factor definitely is one of them for companies that probably made that decision.
You're a much better person than I, Chris.
Well,
hey, I'd be open. I didn't say I wouldn't be open.
I mean, for me, I understand wanting to keep your employees safe, and I also understand shutdowns. I mean, both of those make sense, but I keep going back to the Ukes model, which was really interesting to me, and I like how they continued to take orders. They said, just have patience with us. We will be back. We'll be up and running. If you want to go shopping, shop now. Just understand it may take us a while to get your product out to you. I thought that was a reasonable request of customers. Why can't, I mean, Lisa, doesn't that sound like a reasonable request as an e-commerce retailer? Something that you as a consumer might kind of agree with and say, okay, well, I may not get this, but at least I can still go shopping.
Yeah, I honestly, I saw a few of these too, and I laugh about the Victoria's Secret thing. So I'm like, I wonder how many babies are going to be born in, in 9 months from this whole thing. But the reality is, this is, I think, an unprecedented time, at least in my lifetime. I don't recall seeing a crisis like this. So I think people made decisions and acted hastily and just like went down for a couple of days. I think the Ukes is a perfect example of what people should do. It's like, okay, we're not sure. Can we keep this going? I think people financially aren't sure if they can keep going on e-commerce. So I think the best thing would be is if you do need to, take a hiatus for a week and say, hey, we're going to be back online in a couple of days, or give them a deadline and then figure out what you need to do to clean, to get your product moving, to do things along those lines. I don't disagree with companies actually doing that. I think some people will handle it better, as you just described, but I also think that we're in an unprecedented time. So I'm going to give people a little bit of a cushion on this, but I really highly recommend, if you're not sure if you can keep your e-commerce going or what, at least just say, hey, we're going to be updating our site. We're cleaning our facility. Make some excuse, put it on your website that you'll be back in 72 hours. And then if you're still not sure what you're doing, do what the Ukes are doing, just saying, hey, come on in and put, get your order in and we'll go from there. But I just really think it's a time of crisis right now at such an unprecedented level that people are just doing the best that they can with what they know at this particular time. So I really think you're going to see this changing in the next couple of weeks. And you're right. I think it's silly how people have handled it, but the reality is we're all human. And, right now, I don't think everyone understands exactly what they should be doing. But I agree that they should be open and they should just find a way to be able to backlog orders and then get them out later.
Lisa, one thing that struck me as you were talking is that retail has been going through so much hell for so long now. I think that this hit right when a lot of them were like, really, on top of everything else, this. So I think it's broken the backs of some of them. I mean, Laura Ashley just went down in the UK. All of these guys who are kind of teetering and going, okay, well, we're going to try this and we're going to invest in this. It was just kind of the last part of the rope.
Yeah, I agree with all the, stores closing down, the brick and mortar stores. I think people have been trying to shift a little bit more to e-commerce. And you're right. I think if somebody was right in the middle of that debacle of, do we keep our stores open or do we go fully to e-commerce, and then this hits, I just think it takes, and as a business owner, I do run 2 companies. It's been a little bit of a hit, I have to, have my selling hat on all week. And then on the weekend is when I get to sit down and kind of go, how do I keep this going? So I think it's unprecedented times, but I agree with you. I think the retail stores have already been taking a hit, and I just think this adds to it.
Well, with that, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug. I would normally go to Chris, but Chris dropped off somewhere in the line, so hopefully we'll get him back in a few minutes.
Oh no!
The internet.
Come back.
For those of you listening to this program, you probably haven't heard, you definitely have not heard all the technical difficulties we've suffered throughout here because we've managed to hide most of them. But we can't hide the fact that Chris can't talk about himself. But we'll just mention real quick that you can find Chris at urw.com. That's the home of Westfield where he is. Hopefully he'll come back and we'll talk to him some more. But Rose Cameron still has no website, but you can find her on LinkedIn, which will be on the show notes. Tell us what's going on in your world, Rose. What would you like to promote?
I would like to promote everyone checking on their neighbors and making sure, find a safe way to do it. But please, let's make sure that our neighbors are safe. Check on them once a day, take a walk, just call out, say hi. This is really the time to come together and, just make sure that you're good to each other, people. No coughing on each other, no touching, but do check on each other. That's my call out.
That's a good call out. That's something that we should all be doing a little bit more of. And also we have Lisa Laporte. You can find her at twit.tv as well as artisanalagency.com. Lisa, what's going on in your world? What would you like to promote?
I'd like to piggyback on Rose and promote, media and this podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the BeanCast podcast, please do. And frankly, subscribe to all the podcasts and download them that you're used to listening to. Right now, I think it's a great way to stay socially connected with other people and to consume content. But don't forget about all your favorite podcasts, folks. We all need to be subscribing to and listening to them and helping support them in this time of crisis.
Amen, sister. Preach. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. We couldn't find Chris, but we're going to go into the Fair, Fail, Foul now, which is a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, the fair. Popeyes launched an inspiring, if slightly illegal, Rose campaign offering to share their... whenever I see one of these contests where there's no way to enter the contest except for buying something, I'm going, this is an illegal lottery. Someone's got to know this is an illegal lottery. But anyway, offering to share their Netflix password with the first 1,000 customers who shared a picture of themselves eating Popeyes takeout. I like this because the way they positioned it as being the true sign of friendship is sharing your Netflix password. Well, we're going to share you with a free month of Netflix just for sharing a picture. Yeah.
When brands act like fraternity brothers, I looked at that and I was like, oh, what?
Of course, we just mentioned that we were having all kinds of technical difficulties and we lost Skype again for some reason. I don't understand why, but digital networking tools are not handling the strain and stress of this. I'm not understanding why this is happening. Well, I've got everybody back except for Chris. So we were talking about Popeyes, and Lisa, you were saying that you were a little bit concerned about this as well.
Well, I loved the campaign. It sounded amazing, but I did kind of groan because I just know it's got to be completely illegal. I just know anytime we do a campaign, it's absurd. But good, kudos for them for doing something fun and creative and reminding people to stay at home. But I agree, it's kind of like a frat bro type thing.
Well, the fail of the week goes to the information we got from Doc Searles. He's the author of the Clue Train Manifesto. Apparently, that wonderful, indispensable tool for work-from-home reality called Zoom, you may have heard of it, is probably, according to their user agreement, their user license, is probably sucking all your data and selling it to advertisers, because that's what it says in the EULA. I don't know, Lisa. I'm looking at this and I'm going, I feel bad for it. I think it's a fail on their part for not being upfront about the fact that they're selling ad data to people, but at the same time, I mean, that's a freemium service. You got to expect that they're making money some way.
Yeah, I agree on that. I do, though, worry that brands need to be careful during this time because I think how brands behave today will be remembered down the road. So if Zoom were intelligent, first of all, their market share, their stock's gone up. There's no reason that they're doing this right now. So if they were smart, if I were working on the Zoom team, I would tell them, don't sell that data right now. Just tell people, hey, we understood your concern, update your privacy policy and stick it out there and show people that you're in this to help them get them through this crisis. I think that would be more intelligent than selling people's names right now. And I think if Zoom came out and did something like that, it would be a great way for them to show that they're really going to be leaders during this crisis and that they're going to change what they're doing and benefit another way.
Good point. Good point. And then the foul of the week. For me, this one was something that we've been talking about on the program for the past couple of weeks about the airlines. To put in perspective the extent of the bailout money for the airlines, they will be getting $50 billion collectively, while the state of New York, the hardest hit of all the places with COVID right now, is only getting $5 billion to help out with this. If you're the airline industry, how do you come back from this? I mean, not just from a financial standpoint, but just from the bad look of it. I mean, it's just like, and as Mitch Joel pointed out a couple of weeks ago, they're going to come back understaffed. They're going to come back flying less flights, and it's going to be an even more miserable experience after this. So how do you handle this, Rose?
It is such a tough one. I mean, all of the politics around this, whichever country you go to, other than, of course, Sweden, who never closed anything and still have one of the lowest rates of infection just because they don't touch. It's true. Check it out. But, the politics of this are just wonky. I think we're going to look back at it at the end of the day and say, okay, who benefited the most out of this, and the outlaying of money? Were people or corporations? And how much is one dependent upon the other? And where did governments go during the course of this? I think that's going to be a very, very interesting subject to watch and to wait, as it were.
Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's edition of the BeanCast. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com or click on the subscribe link. And whichever, I've said this so many times and I completely lost my place on this. So this is
it's
the
okay,
kind
just
of
plug in last week, so we won't tell anyone.
No, that's okay.
Exactly.
No, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna leave all this in the show. I'm not gonna change a thing at this point. I'm gonna keep going. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C-Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah.
beans.